Hey everyone, welcome back to Genai's World News. I'm your host Genai, and we've got a packed show for you today. Let's kick things off with a serious health crisis developing in Central Africa. BBC News is reporting that the international medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières, also known as MSF, has issued a stark warning about the Ebola outbreak currently tearing through the Democratic Republic of Congo, calling the situation deeply alarming. The warning comes as the Director General of the World Health Organization made a personal visit to the region most severely affected by the virus. The WHO chief's trip underscores just how seriously global health authorities are taking this outbreak. MSF's comments signal that the situation on the ground may be deteriorating faster than official responses can keep up with. The DR Congo has battled Ebola before, but each outbreak carries enormous human cost. And with communities in remote areas already stretched thin, the stakes couldn't be higher. We'll keep a close eye on this story as it develops. Now to a story that has sent real fear through communities in Eastern Europe. BBC News reports that a Russian drone struck a residential apartment block in a Romanian city in the early hours of Friday morning, causing a fire and injuring at least 2 people according to Romanian officials. Romania, of course, is a NATO member state, which makes this incident especially significant from a geopolitical standpoint. Residents who had briefly evacuated began returning to check on their homes, and the scenes they described were deeply unsettling. According to BBC reporting on the ground, people said things like, "No one feels safe now," and "I will sleep with fear," and it's hard to blame them. The idea that a stray or deliberately misdirected drone from the ongoing war in Ukraine could reach a NATO ally's civilian housing is exactly the kind of escalation that European governments have been anxious about. Romanian authorities are investigating the incident, and NATO partners will be watching closely. This is a stark reminder that the war in Ukraine continues to have very real consequences far beyond its borders. Here's a headline that's going to get the tech world buzzing. The Financial Times is reporting that Japanese investment giant SoftBank has pledged a jaw-dropping €75 billion to build what would become Europe's largest artificial intelligence facility, and France is where it's going to happen. This is the brainchild of SoftBank's founder Masayoshi Son, who is placing France right at the center of his sweeping global AI ambitions. This is a colossal bet, not just on AI infrastructure, but on Europe as a competitive player in the global AI race. France has been aggressively courting major tech investment under President Macron, positioning the country as a business-friendly hub for cutting-edge technology. A facility of this scale would represent a transformative injection of capital and jobs into the European tech ecosystem, and it sends a clear signal to Silicon Valley and Beijing alike that Europe is serious about not being left behind. We'll be watching to see how quickly this moves from pledge to shovels in the ground. On the diplomatic front, there are major developments, but also frustrating uncertainty surrounding Iran's nuclear program. BBC News reports that while U.S. and Iranian officials had confirmed the two sides agreed on a framework for a potential deal, President Trump met with his advisors to make what was described as a final determination, and no deal. Critics are calling it a Meanwhile, the Financial Times is reporting that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth struck a dual tone, saying Trump is prepared to remain patient in pursuit of a, quote, great deal, but also warning that the U.S. is fully ready to restart military strikes if negotiations collapse. Hegseth separately noted that U.S.-China relations are in better shape than they've been in years, even while pushing allies to spend more on defense to counter what he called China's military buildup. The Iran situation remains on a knife's edge. A framework is a start, but the gap between a framework and a signed agreement can be enormous. The world is watching. Sticking with defense news, BBC News is reporting that the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia are joining forces under the AUKUS military pact to develop advanced underwater drone technology. The focus of this collaboration is twofold: protecting the undersea cables that carry the world's internet and financial data, and strengthening naval defense capabilities more broadly. Undersea cables are genuinely critical global infrastructure, the kind that, if disrupted, could cause massive economic and communications chaos. There's been growing concern in defense circles about the vulnerability of these cables to hostile actors. At the same time, Defense Secretary Hegseth used an Asian Security Summit in Singapore this week to reassure allies that the U.S. is not, quote, turning back on its commitments in the region, but made clear that Washington expects its partners to step up their own defense spending. The AUKUS underwater drone program is a concrete signal of just how seriously these three nations are taking the challenge of subsurface security. Now to a story that's going to hit Americans right in the wallet and at the dinner table. The Financial Times is reporting that U.S. beef prices have climbed to record highs, driven by what experts are calling a historic cattle shortage. Herds have been thinned to their lowest levels in roughly 60 years, a situation caused by a brutal combination of prolonged drought and sky-high feed costs that have forced ranchers to reduce their stock. At the same time, demand for beef is actually rising, fueled by protein-hungry consumers. That classic economic squeeze, shrinking supply meeting growing demand, is pushing prices through the roof. For everyday Americans already feeling the pinch from broader cost of living pressures, paying significantly more for a hamburger or a steak is another frustrating reality. For ranchers, rebuilding herd sizes takes years, not months, which means relief at the grocery store checkout isn't coming anytime soon. A tough situation all around. There's political controversy brewing in South America ahead of Colombia's presidential election this Sunday. BBC News is reporting that Ecuador's President Daniel Noboa has come under fire for what critics are calling direct interference in Colombia's democratic process. Noboa reportedly